the filter, rand array sequence sort by unique, XLOOKUP, XMatch, and also a discussion on dynamic array formulas versus legacy control shift enter array formulas traditionally in Microsoft Excel. So I will be presenting you all these functions topics one by one, fundamentally that what kind of function it does behave. What are these syntaxes? We need to understand the function syntax and then we need to understand the application. So we are going to apply it on different kind of situations we face usually in Microsoft Excel and how it is different from the existing Excel functions and how the dynamic array functions are changing the way we work in Microsoft Excel. And definitely the family of dynamic array functions will increase more with the passage of time in the next coming years. So the first function we will be discussing is in this video is Excel filter function. The summary of this function is the Excel filter function filters a range of data based on supplied criteria and extract the matching records. So it is very clear what the function is that usually as a normal Excel user, we have used the filter option or the features available in Microsoft Excel. So what it does is we supply the criteria and the filter function extract the matching reports. So similarly, this array function is also be doing the same, but we have a different kind of examples which I demonstrate in the next few minutes. The purpose of the filter function is do that it filters the range with the given criteria. Now the criteria could be a single or a multiple as well, returning value. There will be an array of filtered values, definitely a multiple array of filter values. The syntax of a filter function is the first is array and the second is include and the third is if empty. Now remember that for those functions arguments which have the square bracket are the optional one and the ones which don't have square brackets are the compulsory to fill. Okay, so let us discuss the arguments first. So the first argument within the filter function is the array means the range are added to filter. You are going to filter next is the include. Include is the boolean array and that is supplied is a criteria and we will discuss. There are different kinds of situations where we have to apply the different criteria in this specific function or argument. Then we have the optional function argument that is called if empty and that means the value to return when no results are returned. So if there are no results to be return. So instead of that alternative of that, what what can we write in that situation? So we feel that this function argument, the quick notes and important notes towards the filter function is the first one is a filter can work with both vertical and horizontal arrays. So it is clear that if your data is being shaped vertically or horizontally, it doesn't matter. It can work on both kind of arrays. So again, the include argument, which is the second argument of this filter function, must have a dimension compatible with the array argument. Otherwise, filter will return hash value error. Number three is if the include array includes any errors, filter will return an error. Okay. So definitely if we do the wrong input and within this argument, the filter will return an error. The fourth one is if filter is used between workbooks, both workbooks must be open, otherwise filter will return reference error. So if you are using it between two workbooks to get the data, definitely both workbooks need to be open at the same time. Okay. So let us start the demonstration side of how we can demonstrate it. So I will start with the practical examples and I hope that now you can see my Excel screen, right? As you can see here, we have a data and we have three columns to it. So we have some names, we have the ages respective to these persons, and we have the name of their bands. Now, what we need to do is we need to filter the data. The person who is working at UPS will be filtered here. Okay, so as a normal Excel user, traditionally we used to apply the filter features available in Excel. But in this video, we are trying to learn the new family of Excel formulas, which is the dynamic error formulas. And we will be solving this situation with the help of filter function. So let's get started. First, I will write the name of the function, that is equals to filter. The first function arguments is the array. So I will select the entire database. Okay, exclusive of the headings. So in our database, my 3 columns will be included in the array. And then the next function argument is called the include. So I will include only the range specific to the criteria which I want. Okay. So that is in my case the columns of the bank, and I will write equal sign and I will give the reference of that criteria which is in I4. You can also write UBL in inverted commas because it is like a text string. So either you can type the word or you can give a reference to a cell, the same for same spelling. And then if there will be no results, so what you need to type in, just like traditionally we use it if error in Microsoft Excel. So there is no output. That if error generates the customized output according to our requirement. But here in the filter function, if this if empty works similarly like that, if there is no results or what you want to add an empty. So let's say we are adding a customized data according to our requirements. So as soon as I press the enter key, you can see that all the persons who are working at UBM has been filtered from this data. And as you can see that I just apply the filter function in one cell and automatically it is spread into a kind of an array which is called a spill. And later on, if you update my entry, any entry in this data set, for example, Ashubham is 31-year-old and is working at SBP. And later on, if I change the data here, so you can see that automatically the filter function it is updating and it is adjusting itself. And that is very unique about these kind of dynamic functions. And let me tell you more about the Excel filter function. Before I proceed to another example is that Excel filter function basically filters a range based on supplied the original range, right? Supplied on criteria. And then the result is an array of matching values within the original range. And when this array is final result, as we can see in the first example, where we have 3 different columns and we need to filter the people who are working at UBL, right? And in simple language, the filter function allows you to easily extract matching records from a larger set of source data based on the criteria you provide. And as I told you that might be we have a single criteria or multiple criteria. It is totally depends on the situation and the result from the filter function are dynamic. When the values in the source data changes or the source data arrays resizes, the results from the filter will automatically update. So for example, if I change one more record, let's say if I again say Shubham is working at SBP, now you can see that the data here changes dynamically. The spill is working and is updating automatically here, right? So this is the beauty of the new dynamic array formulas available in Microsoft Excel. Let's proceed to one more examples of filter function. This is example number 2. Now let's say we have data again in which we have 3 columns: order ID, date and amounts. And what we need to do is we need to filter the data from this data source here. But we have a criteria of dates and we want only transactions which are starting from 14th of April 2020 and ending on 3rd of June 2020. So now we have the criteria that we just need transactions or the data which have these dates included. So we will be trying to solve this with the help of dynamic filter function. And how we can do that? Equals to filter bracket open. First we need to define an array. So you have to select the entire data source, which is starting from V7 to D18, and then in the include function argument, now we will try to execute the criteria. And we have a criteria that we have two dates from 2, and we will be defining that. And they include a function argument. How we are going to do that? So bracket open. And first we will select the range of date column, all the dates, and we will say it is greater than and or equals to G6. Okay. Which is the starting date 14th of April 2020. Bracket close. Multiply by again the same column of dates, which is less than or equals to H6, which is the ending date to June 2020. Now, this specific part will be creating a boolean values at the backend either in true or false. If it matches the criteria, it will give us the result. If it doesn't, it will escape. So on the backend, it generates 1 and 0 and a combination, and from that, it generates the results according to our given criteria. And then what we need to have if there is no data. So we have included an additional text if there is no result to it. So when I press the enter, now you can see that from this data source, we have filtered all those transactions which are starting from 14th of April to now. If you find date in numbers, just like as you can see on my screen, you can change the date as well. Just you need to select the date column, right click, format cells, and from the date criteria, you can select any kind of type you want and press OK. So now you can see that you have easily filtered the data. And later on, for example, if you add any transaction or if you can change anything, for example, if I change the transaction amount from owner ID 662, if I change the amount of it instead of 28,321, if I write 50,000, so you can see that this function updates this data automatically. And that's, I told you, that is how beautiful it is. Even our data is not in a table format, or we don't need to press any kind of a refresh button to it. So that's the beauty. Let's go to the third example. In this example, we will learn that how the filter function help us to exclude the blank value. Sometimes in our data, we have the blank values and we want to exclude them, and then we need to filter the data. So for doing that, let us start excluding the blanks. So equals to filter bracket open. First function argument is the array. Now I hope you have understood that what is array means. You need to select your entire data set, and then we need to define the criteria. Now that's something interesting. Every time they include which needs to put the criteria we should have the strong fundamentals to it, that how we know, how we are going to define it. So we need to exclude the blanks, and as we can see that in the H column and in the blank column, we have some blanks and we don't need to be included in the filter. We need to exclude them. So we will tell that first we will select the age column and we will say Excel, filter all those values which are not equal to blank. So in Microsoft Excel, not equals to is always written with the help of less than or greater than sign together. And 2 times inverted commas means blank. So we are saying that filter that data which is not equals into the blank from the age column. Remember that. And also bracket close and then multiply. Second criteria is also we need to exclude the blank values from the blank column. So we have selected the range from D7 to D16 and we are saying not equals to blank. And if you want to have some additional text in the last option functional argument, you can add that as well or you can skip. Now as you can see that the values which does not have blanks has been filtered out automatically and the values which have blanks has been excluded by the help of filter function. Now let's check that there is a person called Saurabh, age 32, working at HVL. Now, for example, if I miss the name of his bank, if I delete this, so as you can see that the range automatically updates because it is excluded the blanks from the data from the filter criteria, right? So that's pretty much awesome that it is updating automatically again. All right, proceeding towards the last example of the filter function, and in this function, as we say that this is the new era of Excel formulas, and it will change everything with the passage of time. When the family of array formulas or functions will grow in the next coming years, and Microsoft will be adding more dynamic formulas to the Excel Office 365 users. Remember that. So now in the last example of this first function dynamic array, we will be seeing that how filter function can match the exact match. Sometimes we have data in lowercase, sometimes we have data in uppercase. So if we want to filter on those bases, so how we can do with the help of filter function. So let's get started. Equals to filter array means the select the entire range of your data set. And then if you have an understanding of exact function in Microsoft Excel, which is a traditional function in all previous versions. So exact which basically matches two values and it also considers the case sensitive as well. So I will add exact function here and I will say that in the text one function argument, I will select the name or name entire range of the blank list, which is starting from B7 to B16 and common. And the text 2 will be the exact criteria which I need to filter that is usable in small letters, lowercase, and I will close the bracket. So as you can see that there are two persons working at UBL, as you can see, but they are in a small letters. For example, if I write in capital letters, so now there are three different persons with the capital letter in the band. So this is how we filter with the exact matches where we need to handle the key sensitive issues with respect to our data and anything changes in the data set. Definitely it will automatically updates here. So I hope the first dynamic array for interfunction with four different examples has been clear to you, right? And now let us proceed to the second dynamic array functions. So the second dynamic array function is rand array. Okay. So let's discuss first the fundamentals and let's make our concept more strong. This is the second function we are discussing in the video. So the summary of this rand array function is the Excel rand array function generates an array of random numbers between the size or the array is specified by rows and column arguments. Generated values can be either decimals or whole numbers. So when you create a random numbers, you can either give the criteria to generate random numbers in decimals or in whole numbers. And we will have a demonstration shortly for that also. The purpose of this rand array function is to get an array of random numbers and return value a array of random values. If you are a traditional Excel user, you might have used the line between function where you put the lowest and the highest number and it automatically generates random numbers for you. So this is a kind of a similar function, but it has a different utility and we will have a demonstration to it. So that syntax of rand array function is, there are five optional options. All the functions arguments are optional within this argument, so there are arguments such as rows, columns, min, max, and integers. So first there was, let us understand the argument first, and we will then go in Excel for the demonstration. The rows, which is the optional function argument, we need to define the number of rows to return. And by default, if you escape, because this is optional function argument, if you skip it, default value is equals to 1. Similarly, for the columns, again, this is optional, a number of columns to return. If you want more than one column, you have to define the number of columns in a positive number. And if you skip that, the default will be 1. Then minimum, this is optional, minimum value to return. You can apply any kind of minimum value you want. If you don't, you will escape. The default will be 0. Maximum is also the optional function argument and max value to return, so you can apply any maximum value you want to have for the random numbers to generate. But if you escape, the default value will be equals to 1. And now the integer part, as I told you that we can generate the random numbers either in decimal places or as a whole number. So we are going to see that how it works with the true or false. So let us start the demonstration for the rand array function. So here we have a spreadsheet and I will apply the rand array function. So equals to rand array, and as you can see that all the 5 function arguments are optional. So this means that we can skip that. And if I just open the bracket and close the bracket here, and when I press the enter key, so as you can see that the one value is generated, and whenever I press F19, a random value is generated. Okay, so as you can see that because the intersection of the columns and row creates cell, so the default value of rows and columns is 1, as I told you in the presentation. Okay, but let's see what rand array can do more. For example, if we want to have a random values and next 5 rows and next 3 columns, so how we can define that? So we will start equals to rand array. We need to define number of rows in which we are required to get the output. So we need 5 rows to have random values. We need 3 columns, the minimum values. Now, if you skip this minimum value, it will start with the 0. So I want random values starting from 5. The minimum value will be 5. So I have written 5 here and I want maximum value 25. So all the random values by this function will be generated between 5 till 25. And from the integer, if you want these random values to be generated in decimal, you have to write false here. And when I press enter, now you can see that you have generated random values from starting from 5 to 25, right? With the decimals. Now you don't want decimals here, you want the whole number values, so you have to write instead of false. Instead of false, you have to write true for the integers. So when I press enter, so you can see that we have generated the random values starting from 5 to 25 and 5 rows and 3 columns. And later on, you can change anything if you want it. Make it like 8, column 5, 5 till 100. So I can change the criteria later on and it will definitely produce the results according to our given required criteria in the data function. Okay, now the examples could be practically how this function, we can utilize this function as an example is sort by random. You can sort, you can generate the random values and you can use it with the sort functionality. Or if you have a list of names, for example, if you are working in an organization where you have thousands of employees and you just want to extract some random names, so you can apply this function, but this function will not go standalone. It might come with the index or match as well. So I hope you have been clear to this function rand array, what it does, how it is going to work when you apply and practically with the required situations. This will come with other function as well to support the. Now next proceed to third function, which is the sequence function. That this is another dynamic function, and first let's the fundamental parts of it, and then we will go towards the dynamic portion. But one thing is still remaining in the rand array function. Let me tell you what it that is. Just quickly going through this function. So I just want to add some important points of rand array between. So as soon as I proceed to the next function sequence, as a rand array function is a dynamic function, as we know that, right? And for those of you who are exploring these functions for the very first time, it is very important to understand and listen very carefully. That rand array returns an array of random numbers between 0 and 1. If you don't apply any criteria, and the size or the area array, which we have discussed just now, is determined by the supplied rows and columns, and we can change later on as well, right? And the values generated by rand array can be either decimal or the whole numbers. We have also seen the demonstration as well. When rand array returns multiple results in a block sheet, result will spill into adjacent cells. And now I hope that you have got an idea of a spill because we apply the function in one cell and it is automatically spread into an array, which is called the spill. So remember these important key points. Jump to the next function, which is the sequence, right? So the summary of the sequence function is that the actual sequence function generates a list of sequential numbers in an array, and the array can be one-dimensional or two-dimensional. We can also give the starting point and the step value, do the arguments, and we can have this demonstration shortly for that. The purpose is that get an array of list of sequential numbers. We will get the sequential numbers. If we are required, that we can use this function in those situations. Return value, or what this function will return to us on the spreadsheet. They will create an array of sequential values, and the syntax of this function is there are 4 function arguments. The first one is compulsory and the remaining 3 are optional. As you can see, there are square brackets to it. So we will discuss each of the function arguments, what they are mean. So the first argument was rows. So we have to supply a number to it, that how many rows needs to be returned in a sequential function when it creates numbers for us. The second function argument is the columns, which is the optional. Okay, the number of columns to return, how many number of columns we are required to write. And if we don't provide anything, it will just generate numbers and rows. Starting numbers defaults to 1. If you skip that, it starts from the 1. Or if you can have a further reference to your customized choice, you can give any number to the starting number. And then the step value might be some of the users have created serial numbers in Microsoft Excel. Even serial numbers or serial numbers, right? Or when we have a chart of accounts list, so we have steps to it. And that how many steps we need to create a new value to it, so we can give the increment between the each value. And if you skip this function element, it starts defaults to 1. So let us go quickly to the sequential functions demonstration in Microsoft Excel. All right. And here we have some interesting example as well, so that you can understand how sequence function can be utilized in different kinds of situations. But first, I will apply from the very basic equals to sequence. Now, there are 4 function arguments. The first one is rows. Okay, so let's say I want to have an output in 5 rows till 5 rows. How many columns? For example, 4 columns. The start value, I want to start this from 0. For example, on step value, I want each value with a step of 5, means 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Okay, so I want a step of 5 and I will close the bracket. And remember that we are applying sequence function in one cell, but it will create a split. It will create an array for us. And when I press enter key, you can see the results. The sequence with a step value 0, 5, 10, 15, 28, 25, 30, 35. So this is the beauty of this sequence functions. And later on, you can change the criteria according to your requirement. For example, if I want the output comes in across the its it columns step value will be 10, so definitely it will generate the results according to our given criteria. Okay. Let's come to the examples. For example, if we want to use sequence dynamic function in three different practical examples, we want to create a list of days with a step value of 1, or we want to create a list of sequence of hours just like 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m., or we want to have first date of every month and the last date of every month in a sequence. So there are three different situations and I will apply the situation one by one. And I assume that, and the prerequisite that you are, you might be an intermediate Excel user and you know some of the functions of Excel so that it will not create a confusion so for example, one, I hope that is clear. But for the demonstration part, for the second one, we want to create increment of days. So we will be writing equals to sequence. Now, how many numbers of rows you need an output? So let's say I want 10 outputs and one column that will be 10 rows. And how many columns? That will be one column. This is the current column. Starting value will be start date, which is B16, which is in B16. And I need to create a step, which is 1, because I need every day date. So as we know that in Microsoft Excel, an increment of the 1 changes the next date, right? So when I press the enter, now you can see that we got 6 January, 7 January, 8 January, 9 January, just like a series of days, right, as in sequence. So we have generated this with the help of sequence. Now, as it is as a normal Excel users, you might not have explored the CPS function before, or you are doing this kind of same work with the different strategies. But as I told you, with the availability of dynamic array functions, now the work done is very quickly, dynamically, with the help of these dynamic functions. So this is how we can create a sequence of days. Now, for example, we need to create a sequence of hours, so we need to add some more functions to it. So the first function will be the time, because we are dealing now with time, not with the numbers itself. So equals to time. Then we need to create a sequence, and sequence, for example, we need to create this output to next 10 rows of only one column, and definitely the starting point. Starting point is the 9 a.m., but on the back end, it is a number, or to deal with it, we need to add the or function. The cell will be F16 and then comma 1. The step value will be 1 because we need a time like 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m., so on. Okay, then closing the bracket, we don't need minutes and seconds, so we don't need minute and second. We will write 0 here. We will close the bracket. So now as you can see that we have created a sequence of hours with the help of three functions. Time sequence, and because we are dealing with the time, so you also keep in mind that the dynamic array functions every time does not come with standard now. They come with different kind of functions to meet your requirement based on the situations. Now the last situation is getting every month first date and the last month date with a sequence. Okay, so how are we going to do that? So for that, I will be using equals to eDate. Now, if you don't know eDate, I can just read it for you. This is just normal Excel functions available in all versions. What it does, It is returns the serial number of the date, that is indicated number of months before and or after the start date. So it will provide the starting dates of every month. Okay. So e date bracket open. So the start date is in I16, and we will add sequence dynamic add a function to it so that it can create a sequence. And within the sequence, we need next 12 months. First date 12 is not the fixed number here. You can write 10 here, you can write 8 here. This means that how many outputs you want in this specific column. So I need 12 specific outputs. And then how many columns output you are required? One which is in the current columns and starting with the 0. And I need to press Control, Shift and Enter key. So that's the basic requirements. And if I press Control Shift 3, this will change the format of the date. So you can see that the months are changing, but dates are not every month. First date is now appearing with the sequence 1st May 1st, June 1st, July 1st, August for September. And similarly, if we want the last date of every month within a sequence, so for that we can use another Excel for normal function. This is called EO months. Okay, so EO months is basically opposite to the date, and EO months returns the serial number of the last day of the month before or after a specified number of months. Okay, so I am using EO months bracket open. So the starting date is in I16, and we will add sequence function to it. So the number of rows we are required, for example, again I want 12 outputs then in this specific column, which is 1 and 0 starting point, and I will press Control Shift and Enter. Again, this is an array formula because sequence itself is a dynamic array function, but EM1 is not. And for that, I need to press Control Shift Enter. And if you see these kind of numbers, don't worry. As I told you in this earlier video, if you need, because dates are a number on the back end, so if you need to change the format, you can just right click, going to the format cells, click on date and change the format. So now you are getting Control Shift 3. So now you are getting a sequence of ending date of every month, right? Now imagine that doing it without these kind of new dynamic array functions, it would be very difficult for the normal user to find a solution for these kind of situation, right? And this is how dynamic array function is changing the way Excel user in working in at Microsoft Excel. So I hope this function is now clear to you with these kind of three different situations. Okay. All right. Now moving towards the next function of the dynamic array, the sort function. So the summary of the sort function is that Excel sort function sorts the content of a range or an array. Might be you have previously used sort of built-in functionality in Microsoft Excel, and you know with the word sort, it can come in your mind the sorting of text values, the sorting of a number values from ascending to descending, descending to ascending, right? So the sorting function does the same, but it says a lot of capability of adjusting itself into a different kind of complex situations. So let us discuss this. The Excel sort function sorts the content of a range or array. Values can be sorted by one or more columns. Sort returns a dynamic array of preserves, and that's the beauty of it. The purpose of the sort function is to sort range or return value. Definitely, we will get a sorted array, and the syntax of this function is there are four different function arguments. The first one is array, which is the compulsory, and then three are the optional: sort, index, sort order, and by column. And let us understand each of this function arguments, what it actually does. So the first function argument is the array means range or array to sort. You are required to sort. Sort index means which column will be the base point for sorting. So the default is 1. Sort order means if you want to sort in ascending, you have to write 1. If you want to sort in descending, you need to write minus 1. And if you skip, either you don't write 1 or minus 1. If you skip this optional function argument, default is ascending order, right? Column means true, means sort by column. If you have a column which is data and you want to sort column wise data, you need to write true. If you want to sort row wise data, you need to write false. And if you skip that, it will be false at a default. So let us start the demonstration part, and now we will discuss two different examples regarding this sort function, and that will also give you an idea that at present how you are doing in XM, and after the dynamic array, how you can perform very easily in by the help of sort function. And we have one more similar kind of function with a little difference, which is sort by, which we will discuss after this function. So let us start first. I will just copy the headings here, and now I will apply the sort function equals to sort. First it says they select the array. So the array will be definitely, we need to sort this data based on two columns which are different names and their respective scores. Then based on which column, now we need to sort the data. Okay. We need to sort the data according to the scores. Now a score is the second column sort index. So we will write 2 here. Then which type of sort order you are required? Either you are required ascending or descending. If you are required highest to lowest, so this means you are required descending. And for descending, you need to write -1. And then how this sort will create the results for you either in row. This is the row wise sorting or column wise sorting. And we know that this is the row sorting. So we have to write false here, and we can escape. If we will escape, the default is false. So when I press enter, now you can see that I just applied the function in one sem and it spread all over the way to create an array, and this unsorted data has now been sorted or descending to ascending, highest to lowest. So this is very easy to do with the help of sort function, dynamic array function. Now you can compare it with primarily what you are doing currently in Microsoft Excel for doing these kind of things. And definitely, as I told you, that dynamic is changing or reshaping the way user uses the Microsoft Excel. The second example is now we have a data in a different kind of followed column wise, and we need to sort that. So again, equals to sort array. Array means the entire data set exclusive of headings. So I have selected the data which is starting from C16 to L17 sort index. Now what will be the sort index? Definitely, we need to sort depend on the scores. So that is this second row here, sorting according to the highest to lowest for the highest to lowest. We are using descending, which is minus form, and we know that we are sorting column-wise data. So to start the column-wise data, we need to write true here. And as soon as I press the enter, now you can see that your unsorted data has been sorted very easily. So these are the two examples which you can use the sort function, but this is not limited to this scope or extent. So I can come handy with different kinds of additional functions as well. As I told you, it is depending on your situation or use case, but it is very important in this video to understand the fundamental of each of the dynamic arrays, so that later on you will learn all these dynamic functions, so then you can add a combination of 2 or 3 dynamic formulas or functions to get your desired output. Okay, going towards the next function of the dynamic array, which is the sort by. So first the summary. The sort by function sorts the contents of an range or array based on the values from another range or array. Now you need to understand the difference between the sort and the sort by. So if sort is doing the sorting, then why we have sort by? So there is very critical point. I am reading it again. The actual sort by function sorts the content of a range or array based on the values from another range or array. The range or array used to sort does not need to appear in results. So it will be having a base column which will be base, and sorting depends on the other column, but it will not create a results for that as we done in the sort function. And we have a demonstration in the next few minutes. The purpose of a sort by function is to sort a range or array of a column. The returning of this function is a sorted array. Syntax, we need to understand the syntax. There are more than four function arguments to it. The first one is the array, which is the compulsory. The second one is by array, which is also a compulsory, and then remaining are the optional. So if we discuss the arguments, the array means we can now understand the array means a range or a group of cells to sort. By array means a range or array to sort by. What that range would be, which will be the base for sorting out data. Sort order again. This is optional. But if you want ascending, which is the default, you need to write 1, descending -1. Array on order, which is optional, additional array, and sort order pairs. There are few important notes towards the sort by function. Let's discuss this first, and then we will quickly jump to the Excel demonstration part. So the all arguments must have compatible dimensions. This means that array and by array must contain the same number of rows, which means equal and number of data. This doesn't mean that array has 10 rows of data and array 1 has 8. So this should be there should be same number of rows equal, and the binary arguments can only be one row or one column. Okay. The third order argument can only be -1, descending or ascending. If no value provided, sort by will use this ascending order as a default. So let's start the demonstration part, that how sort by works. Okay, so now we have example here. We have two columns, names and scores, and we are required an output only 4 names, and we need to sort the names based on scores, but we don't want scores as an output to be the part. So in these kind of situations, we use the sort by function, and how we are going to do it equals to sort by bracket open. First, we need to write the array. So it is starting from the array which will be output. So B4 to B13. Then in by array, which is the criteria part, which is the base point of, and we will include the score column starting from C4 to C13, and we will say that sort this column into descending order, which is -1 and bracket close. So now we got output of name of the person based on their highest to lowest score. So as you can see here, see there, the first name is Shubham. Now, why are we getting Shubham at the top? Because Shubham has the highest score, which is 95. Why we are getting the Yogesh at the second position? Because the second highest number. So we have extracted the sorted list from the data source based on the score and the backend. And this kind of functionality is being done by sort by function and more ideas tools. You can sort by text length. You can create a column list and then you can sort to it. So there are many ideas to it. And now you can compare it with primarily with the normal Excel strategies as compared to this kind of awesome dynamic array functions. So now let us proceed towards the next function, but is the actual unique function. Alright, so first we will understand the fundamentals of the Excel unique functions. So the Excel unique function basically extract a list of unique values from a range, and the result is dynamic array of values. And if this is the final result, if not handed off to the another function array, so values when split onto the other worksheet into our range automatically updates when new unique values are added or removed from the source range. And as I told you that from the starting of this video, that all these dynamic functions are very smart. They create spill, they create arrays, and when the data gets updated, they adjust themselves accordingly. So the primarily you can again connect with the normal Excel strategies and or our best practices or habits we do in Excel. For example, if we have a list of names and we have a duplication in it and we just need a unique list, so we have a built-in utility which is called remove duplication, Microsoft Excel, right? So we copy the list and then we click on remove duplicates and all the unique values remains. Or sometimes we need to create a very complex formula in order to get the extracted unique values from a list of duplicate values. And remember that there is a difference between distinct values and unique values. Sometimes in few situations, distinct and unique might be same, but when it comes to the conceptual side, the unique and distinct is always a different concept. In many business use cases, when we apply this count, when you apply the count of unique values or the account of distinct items, the number is not always the same. So remember that the purpose of unique function is to extract unique values from a range. Definitely, that's the simple purpose return value array of unique values. Syntax. Now it is very important to understand the syntax of unique function. The syntax of unique function is the first is array, then by column and exactly once. And I will tell you then what exactly those means. So the array means the range of array, range or area from which to extract unique values. The second argument is by column, that is optional how to sort, okay, but always be the false. We need to write false by column wise. We need to write true exactly once means that the true means values that occur once, all the values which occur once which are distinct. We need to write true. In that case, if we need to have a distinct values to be extract, we can write true all unique values which are repeating itself again and again. We can write false in that kind of scenario. So we need to understand the concept of unique and distinct, and we need to you apply very carefully the true or false in one of those cases. So let us start the demonstration side. So now we have a small list of software names, Excel, Word, and PowerPoint, and you can see that all these three words are repeating. So what we need is we need to extract a unique list. So let's apply the unique dynamic array function equals to unique, and the first function argument is the array, means a group of cells. So I have selected a range starting from B4 to B12, and let's say I am skipping the next two function argument. What will be happen? What will happen? I just got my unique list from a list of duplicates, data, Excel, and PowerPoint. Very simple. And later on, if anything repeats, for example, ERP, and now you can see that if I add it, if I rename ERP as well, duplicating, so ERP is now automatically has been added in the list. So if I undo it, and let me tell you the next two function arguments, what does that mean? So first we selected the array, okay, then by column. So return unique values from the columns or from the rows. We know that we have each unique. We need to extract each unique value from the row, which is this the default. So we can exclude that. But if you have a different kind of data set in a different dimensions, then you need to apply this true or false according to the situation. Okay. And then, as I told you exactly once, means either you need to extract the distinct item. So for having a distinct item from a list, you will have to write false here. Okay. And for a repetitive or for one time entry, you can write true here. So that depends on the situation, right? So that's all about the unique function, okay? And we have heard a lot about XLOOKUP. And primarily XLOOKUP will be understand why those who are currently using either VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, index or match. So if you are a user which is already using VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, index and match, you will easily get the utility of XLOOKUP function. And now if you have the Office 365 available and you have all these dynamic array functions available in your desktop in Microsoft Excel versa. So I suggest you to eliminate using further VLOOKUP, index and match because all these function utility now in one function which is called XLOOKUP function. Okay. So XLOOKUP function can perform all kinds of behavior which is usually performed by VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, index and match. So let's discuss the summary of XLOOKUP function. The summary of XLOOKUP function is that the Excel XLOOKUP function is a modern and flexible replacement for the older functions like VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, and lookup. So as you lookup supports appropriate and exact matching. Also, they support the wildcards, which is a static and question mark for the partial matches. And also XLOOKUP works in the vertical and horizontal ranges as well. The purpose definitely the same purpose which VLOOKUP and index match has. So XLOOKUP purpose is to find the values in a range or table. Return value. Return value definitely will be the best match, either that will be the exact match or the appropriate match according to data or the condition or situation. The syntax of XLOOKUP is larger as compared to VLOOKUP or index and match. We need to understand that because it is more dynamic and intuitive towards substituting these old functions. So XLOOKUP first function argument is basically compulsory arguments, which is the lookup, then the lookup array. If you have used index and match is specifically those users who have index and match applied before, so they can understand these two arguments very easy. Then return array will be the result array not found if the value is not found. What we need to have in this argument, match mode and search mode. Now we need to understand the match mode and search mode. So for first argument, let us understand the argument first and the advantages of XLOOKUP, and then we will go towards the demonstration side. So the first argument is the lookup, which is the lookup value, lookup array. We need to select the array or range of cells in which we need to search the criteria. Return array, the array or range to return. That will be the result array. We need to select only that specific column or row not found. This is optional. This will be the value to return if there is no match to found. If there is no match, what kind of value you need to have in cell match mode? There are three match modes here. Basically, it is optional, and if you skip that, so this is the exact match by default. So you are a user of VLOOKUP, and those of you who are user of VLOOKUP and in VLOOKUP, if we skip the last argument, which is the range lookup, so there in that particular function, the default is 1, which is the true approximate match. But in XLOOKUP, the match mode default of option is exact match, which is 0, means false. Then we can also use -1 for the exact match or the next smallest. We can use 1 for the exact match or the next larger, which relates to the approximate match. Whenever we are finding any value which is not exactly available, we can go with the 1 or -1 depending on the criteria, and we can use 2 if we using wildcard match, and we might be some of the users know what wildcards are. We can use wildcards in some count If we look up the index and match for the partial matches, the search mode, definitely we have different kind of search modes. So if we use one, it will search from the first value default. If we use -1, it will search from the last value, which is the reverse of 2 for the binary search, which is the ascending, and -2 for the binary search descending. So these are the criterias, match type criterias, which we apply. As I told you, it is depending on the situation. Either we are going with the exact match, either we are going for the approximate match, or we are doing the partial match, or we are using the wildcard. So the benefits, why the XLOOKUP is different from the VLOOKUP and the index and match. So the first benefit is the XLOOKUP offers several important advantages, especially compared to the VLOOKUP. So XLOOKUP can look up data to the right or left of lookup values. And as we know that VLOOKUP works from left to right, not from right to left. So XLOOKUP can go in any kind of direction similar to the index and match. XLOOKUP can return multiple results. Okay. I will tell you an excellent next example, which is the demonstration part. XLOOKUP defaults to an exact match, whereas VLOOKUP default to approximate match. And I have told you the reason for that earlier. XLOOKUP can work with either with the horizontal data or vertical data, but now as compared to the current your usage in Excel, when your data is column wise, you use VLOOKUP. When your data is all row wise, you use HLOOKUP. But either your data is vertical or horizontal, no need to worry about that. You can use XLOOKUP for both kinds of different data sets. XLOOKUP can perform a reverse search, which is not available in VLOOKUP and index and match. So XLOOKUP can perform a reverse search as well. XLOOKUP can return entire rows of columns, not just one values, because it creates spills. Okay. XLOOKUP can work with arrays natively to apply complex criteria. Okay. So before coming to the nodes, let me take you to the demonstration part. And if you understand the XLOOKUP, you can also understand the XMatch function as well. That gives you a relative position of a particular value. But first, we have some examples here, and I have applied the XLOOKUP function on this data set. So we have a data, we have a company name, different company names, we have headcount, human resource working in that organization, sales, and their types. Now, this is not the real data. Remember that this is just an imaginary data, fictitious data, just to give you demonstration for the lookup. So now, for example, if we need to find out the number of headcounts from a data for the company Anglo, so now we are not using the VLOOKUP or any kind of index or match function. We will be using straight XLOOKUP. The first argument is lookup value, which is the Anglo available in H4 lookup array. Now in the VLOOKUP, we used to select entire data in the table array. Now in the XLOOKUP, it is very different. You just need to select that specific column for the lookup value you are searching for and then return array when this XLOOKUP will find the name of the company. What kind of return you want? We need a number of headcount which is available in that particular column for that particular company. So we have just selected our C4 till C10 and I will skip all those optional function arguments and I will just close the bracket. So instead of VLOOKUP, we used each lookup very simple and we got the head count which is 5084 exactly matching for the company Angro. And this is the first example. Second example, there is a type called B and we need to find out the company name which is in type B. Now this is lookup towards the left side and we know that VLOOKUP does not work from right to left, whereas XLOOKUP can perform that. So equals to XLOOKUP, lookup value again available in L4, lookup array. So we need to only select that specific column, which is the type column in our case. Return array, what return? We are required. We need the name of the company, so we just need to select the range of the company name and we will just close the bracket so we can see that in the type B, the company name is HBL and we got there. So this is exactly working like index and match if you have the idea, okay? So can perform left side lookups as well. Now, in the third example, if we have the data set, but this is in row wise, so we have units, we have different units 25, 35, and 50. According to that, we have some discount rates available, and we want to get an idea that on 33 units, how much discount we can get. So if you are a user of index and match or the VLOOKUP, you might be using this kind of situation. And and where you apply the one of the approximate match because we are working with the number which is not exactly available in the data. So you always use the approximate match, but in XLOOKUP, how we are going to use it? Let's do it. Equals to XLOOKUP. Lookup value will be H14. That is the number of units we are trying to find. Lookup. So we need to look up the number of units range. Return array will be the discount percentage we want to have. If not found, we will escape that. Now the match mode. So now the match mode will be one there because either we need the exact match which we know that exact match is not available on the next larger item. So we are using one here and search mode. We are not using any search mode here for in this scenario and we got the 7%. So if we have 33 units, we can get 7% discount, right? Let's say if we have 26 units, we will get because now this criteria is surpassed by the next criteria. So we have 36 units, we will get 10% discount. If we have 37 units, we will get 10% discount. If we have 5 units, we will purchase 5 units, we will get 1% only because this falls in this criteria, which is the approximate match. So this is very easy to use the look lookup, but the ideas are not limited to it. The main purpose of this video was to give you the fundamental idea about each of the functions that how they are going to apply in Excel and what are their outcomes, what kind of function arguments they hold, how they are dynamic and how they are very much different from the normal Excel strategies which we usually apply in different kinds of situations. The last function, I would like to give you the idea about Xmatch. So if you have previously used index and match in Microsoft Excel and particularly if you have used a match function, okay? So if you have used a match function gives you a return value as a number and it finds the position of that particular criteria either presented in certain row or column. So Xmatch is substitute for that. In the Excel X match function performs a lookup and returns a position as similar to the match function, and X match can perform lookups either in vertical and horizontal as well. And this is meant to be more flexible and more successor to the match functions, and that's the extra advantage when we compare these two functions. So just like X lookups support both approximate match and exact match and wildcards for the partial match. So like XLOOKUP function, XMatch can search data starting from first value to the last value. And it has a capability to do the reverse search as well. And finally, XMatch can perform binary searches as well, which are specifically optimized for the speed. And if you have observed that we have issues towards the large data sets and speed optimization when it comes to Excel. So these new dynamic functions help us to make sure that our workflow's speed should not be compromised and giving you a quick demonstration. For example, if we want to find out the position of a MCB company from the list of companies names, so what we are going to do, let's say if I write MCB here and I need to find the position of this value from a list of companies, so I have applied the X match lookup values in H7 Then lookup array. Lookup array will be the company name in which we are finding that particular value match. Either we can go for the exact match or we can go for the approximate match and wildcards depending on the situations. Or in this situation, we will go for the exact match, and for the exact match, we have a 0 here. So it returns 4. Why 4? Because MCV is being located at the fourth position and this company data set company column, but there are many uses of X match as well. Okay, so that's all for today, and thank you so much.